Small cell lung cancer has long been one of the most aggressive and devastating forms of cancer, notorious for its ability to spread quickly and invade the brain, where treatment options are limited and patient survival is short. On September 10, 2025, Stanford medicine researchers unveiled a discovery that completely changes our understanding of how these tumors grow once they reach the brain. The team found that small cell lung cancer cells don't just sit passively in brain tissue. Instead, they plug directly into the brain's own circuitry by forming real electrical synapses with neurons. These connections allow the cancer to hijack electrical signals, fueling its growth and survival. The finding is a paradigm shift. It shows that brain metastases are not just invaders but active participants in neural communication, and that opens entirely new doors for therapy. To understand why this is revolutionary, we need to appreciate the context. Small cell lung cancer represents about 15% of all lung cancers, but it behaves very differently from the more common non-small cell type. It grows fast, spreads early, and frequently migrates to the brain. Patients diagnosed with brain metastasis typically face a grim prognosis, with median survival measured in months, not years. Standard treatment includes chemotherapy, radiation, and sometimes immunotherapy, but the results have been disappointing. That is why researchers worldwide have been trying to uncover what makes this cancer so aggressive once it gets into the brain. The Stanford team, led by scientists in neuro-oncology and cancer biology, has now provided an answer that no one expected. The cancer is literally wired into the nervous system. Using a combination of advanced imaging, electron microscopy, and electrophysiology, the researchers demonstrated that cancer cells create direct synaptic connections with neurons. This isn't a metaphor. The cells form structures that look and function like synapses, complete with neurotransmitter receptors and the ability to conduct electrical currents. When neurons fire, the cancer cells receive the signal, and instead of being damaged by it, they thrive. These currents drive growth pathways in the cancer, making it replicate faster and invade deeper. In experimental models, stimulating neurons optogenetically caused the tumors to grow more aggressively. Conversely, blocking the neural signals slowed the cancer down. What makes this discovery even more compelling is that the team identified drugs already used in neurology that can interfere with this process. Anti-seizure medications, for example, are designed to dampen abnormal electrical signaling in the brain. In preclinical tests, some of these drugs reduced the ability of small cell lung cancer cells to exploit neural input. That suggests doctors might be able to repurpose existing, FDA-approved medications to block the cancer neuron handshake. Repurposing is one of the fastest ways to bring a discovery to patients, because the drugs already have established safety profiles. Clinical trials could begin much sooner than if entirely new drugs had to be developed. The implications go beyond lung cancer. If small cell lung cancer can form synapses with neurons, could other cancers do the same? There is already emerging evidence that gliomas and breast cancer brain metastases also interact with neural circuits, though perhaps by different mechanisms. This Stanford breakthrough adds strong evidence that cancer neuroscience is a field we must take seriously. Tumors are not just collections of rogue cells. They are communities that actively communicate with the microenvironments they invade. And in the brain, that microenvironment is the most sophisticated signaling system in the body. Why does this matter so much for patients? Because stopping metastasis is the single biggest challenge in oncology. Most cancer deaths are not from the primary tumor but from metastatic disease that spreads to vital organs. In lung cancer, the brain is a common and deadly destination. If we can block the cancer from establishing electrical lifelines with neurons, we may be able to slow or even prevent brain metastasis from thriving. Imagine a patient with newly diagnosed small cell lung cancer who, alongside standard chemotherapy, is also given a neuroactive drug to shield the brain from cancer's electrical takeover. That could mean fewer metastases, slower progression, and ultimately longer survival. The Stanford researchers emphasized that this is not science fiction. They recorded real currents flowing from neurons into cancer cells. They showed that when these currents were interrupted, tumors grew more slowly. They identified receptor proteins on the cancer cells that made the synapses possible. Each of these discoveries offers a target for drugs. One possibility is to block the specific receptors that cancer cells use to receive neural input. Another is to use brain-penetrant molecules that generally dampen synaptic activity. Both strategies could be tested relatively quickly in clinical trials. The discovery also raises fascinating questions about the biology of cancer. How do cancer cells develop the ability to form synapses? Are they reactivating ancient developmental programs that allow cell-cell communication? Is this ability unique to certain cancers, or is it more widespread than we know? Could the neural environment explain why some metastases flourish in the brain while others fail to establish themselves? Each of these questions will fuel research in the coming years, and the answers could lead to new strategies not only for lung cancer but for many other cancers that spread to the brain. From a societal perspective, the breakthrough matters because brain metastases are not rare. In the United States alone, tens of thousands of cancer patients develop them every year. Treatment is costly, difficult, and often only palliative. If an existing, inexpensive neurological drug could be repurposed to slow metastatic growth, the impact on healthcare systems would be immense. Patients would gain more time, families would face fewer devastating losses, and healthcare costs could be reduced by limiting the need for repeated hospitalizations and radiation treatments. For the field of oncology, this marks the beginning of what could be called the era of neuro-oncological therapeutics. Traditionally, cancer research has focused on genetics, immune responses, and blood supply. Those remain vital, but now we have to consider neurons as active players in tumor biology. The concept that electrical activity could drive cancer growth may seem radical, but the evidence is clear. And radical ideas are often the ones that open the biggest doors. Clinically, what happens next is critical. The Stanford group is already working with collaborators to design early-phase clinical trials that test anti-seizure drugs in patients with small cell lung cancer who are at high risk of brain metastasis. If those trials show benefit, it could rapidly change guidelines. Imagine a world where oncologists prescribe both chemotherapy and a neural blocker as standard care for small cell lung cancer. That would be a seismic shift in treatment practice. Beyond the clinic, this discovery is a story that resonates with the public. The idea of cancer cells literally wiring themselves into the brain's circuitry captures the imagination and highlights the ingenuity of scientific research. It makes clear that we are still uncovering the hidden tricks cancer uses to survive, and that with each revelation, we get closer to shutting those tricks down. For social media audiences, the headline writes itself. Lung cancer cells plug into your brain's power grid. That kind of imagery makes people stop scrolling and pay attention. In terms of search optimization, the key terms are straightforward. Lung cancer, brain metastasis, electrical synapses cancer, Stanford breakthrough, anti-seizure drugs repurposed, cancer neuroscience, new therapeutic target. Each of those keywords aligns with how people will search for this story, whether they are patients, families, doctors, or just science enthusiasts. Including them early and often ensures that the content surfaces across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat. The bottom line is simple but profound. On September 10, 2025, Stanford researchers showed the world that cancer can hijack neurons to survive and grow. They also showed us that by blocking that hijacking, we might finally have a new weapon against one of the most lethal forms of lung cancer. This is a scientific turning point that could translate into clinical benefit much sooner than we usually expect. It is not just another incremental step. It is a leap forward in our fight against cancer. If you want to keep up with the biggest breakthroughs in science and medicine, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit the notification bell.